Good evening, and welcome to the November 15th, 2023 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have three meetings this evening. We have a Fire Committee meeting, a Police Committee meeting, and the Board of Commissioners meeting. Now, before we start, I ask that you silence your cell phones. There's amplifying equipment available for those having difficulty hearing during the meeting. The audio system in this room is equipped with telecoil, and so if you have hearing aids that use telecoils, you can connect directly to the audio in this room. And then when we turn to public comment and public privilege, when the floor is open for public comment, we're going to ask those making comment if you're in the room, come to this podium up to your left, to my right. And if you speak directly into that microphone, that would help a lot for us hearing you. If you are attending virtually, after the people in the room make public comment, we will turn to those who are online via Zoom. If you raise your virtual hand, the Township Secretary will promote you into being able to make public comment. And if you're making comments, we ask that you introduce yourself with your name and where approximately in the township you live. And just be aware that's the policy of this board to respond to public comment only after everyone has made comments. We don't respond interactively. So before we get started this evening, we have some presentations to former advisory board members in recognition of their service to our township. I would like to ask Commissioners Grimes and Churchill to join me in the oval up here. And while we're making our way up here, I'd like to ask Christine Stallkamp from the Health Advisory Council to join us, and Harold Goldner from the Human Relations Commission to join us. And while they are coming up here, I would also like to acknowledge Jen Mavow, who couldn't be here with us tonight, but she served on the Environmental Advisory Council from March 2019 through March 2023. And so I'll turn to Commissioner Grimes. You need this?
Thank you. So I'm here to thank Dr. Stallkamp for your service on our Health Advisory Board. You served as chair for 9 years in addition to your full-time job with Mainline Health. And we're very appreciative. I think all of us recognize that those 9 years included probably 2 years plus of the most challenging times in terms of health at our township between COVID rules and everything else, again, in addition to your regular duties. So again, we're very appreciative for your service, and I should say particularly so because I saw also that you've been working with our elections as a judge of elections while you're doing your full-time job and the Health Advisory Board. So thank you very much, and I'm pleased to present this to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Lower Merion is really blessed with the people who serve on our advisory boards and commissions. I remember a couple of years ago talking with Commissioner Dan Bernheim, and we were appointing people, and he said, "Would you qualify for any of these positions?" And I said, "No." He said, "Neither would I." But tonight is a sad time but very happy time for Mr. Goldman, who served, I think, 11 years on the Human Relations Committee. As it got started, you were also its president, and it filled a need that the state did not have. And that's what I think was very important. And I asked you just recently, what are you going to do with all your free time? And you said you were going to practice law until you get it right. So I hope in your new endeavor that you will work as well as you served in the Human Relations Committee. And as a small token of our appreciation,
Thank you very much for your service. With that, we turn to the Fire Committee meeting, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, President Steiner. That truly is a tough act to follow when folks who have devoted such special time to our township, and with Harold, who I had an opportunity to do a lot of work for, and some of his novelty for what he presented to us, well-deserved recognition, my friend. However, for the Fire Committee tonight, we have something that's a little bit unique, a drop of background. For each of our fire companies, they have various fire apparatus, fire trucks, and we have a fire apparatus policy, which this board approves, as to what's going to be purchased and when. And we review that policy from time to time. In fact, it's up probably fairly soon, as I recollect. And in the interim, unfortunately, in September, the ladder truck of Gladwin, while it was at an annual test, caught fire. A little bit ironic, but that did occur. And the ladder truck, which is a vital part of our fire service, is now totally out of service. The fire actually resulted in a determination that it was totaled, and there's a need to replace it. The fire apparatus policy had this on schedule for 2028, but here we are now looking at the fact that we need to probably move that up forward. The board of directors of the fire department, which comprises all of the fire chiefs among others, approved doing this, in that if we were to advance the schedule for the purchase of the Gladwin ladder truck, now that we need one, even at breakneck speed, it may not be ready by 2026. It may not even be ready until the original scheduled time of 2028, given all of the delays and the complexities of going forward to do this. So we have before us tonight a motion to go ahead and consider for recommendation to the board to approve a waiver of the apparatus policy to allow for the potential early purchase of the new Gladwin Fire Company tractor-drawn aerial ladder truck prior to its scheduled 2028 replacement date. And I will note that the insurance proceeds related to the truck, not the equipment, that may be different, but to the truck will be something that comes to the township, because in the apparatus policy that we last adopted, something new was, in light of the fact that the township pays for the fire apparatus, we now own it. It used to be owned by the fire companies. So we will own it, and if a truck was sold, we would have gotten those proceeds for a new truck. The insurance proceeds related to this unfortunate burning will then come to us for the eventual costs. So we do have the chief of Plain Lease from the Gladwin Fire Company was here in case anybody has any questions. If not, we'll reiterate the motion. We can then hopefully second it, and any comments, have those, and then move forward. So does anybody first have any questions? Scene up. Commissioner Zoll.
Commissioner Bernheim, I think your explanation all makes sense. I guess it's also, in addition to the township owning fire apparatus now, we manage the procurement process in terms of working with the fire company on the specifications and I believe issuing the RFP, and so for its acquisition. Since our chief fire officer is not here, I'll look to Ernie to make sure that that's correct.
I'm sorry.
That we work with the fire company in developing the specifications for a new truck, and we issue the request for proposal or quote.
We do. Our fleet manager works with the committee, with each fire company that is due to buy a new piece of apparatus, works on the specifications, prepares them, and then we issue the RFP.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any other questions? So with that, I'll formally make the motion to consider for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners approval of a waiver from the Fire Department apparatus policy to allow for the potential early purchase of a new Gladwin Fire Company tractor-drawn aerial ladder truck prior to its scheduled 2028 replacement date. Do I have a second? Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. Any other discussion? Seen? Yes.
I think Manager Neely looked into an electric fire truck, and would you just comment on the problems?
The problems with all the heavy equipment, whether it's fire trucks or trash trucks, is the amount of batteries that go into them, make them weigh so much they can't cross some bridges in the township. The batteries just weigh a whole lot to run a big piece of apparatus like that.
Okay, so I just wanted to, for those people interested in sustainability.
Very good. All right. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much, Commissioner Churchill. Anybody else? All right, see none, we'll then call the vote.
Is there public comment?
Well, that's a good point. Thank you very much. Is there anybody who is present that wishes to make comment? Anybody online? All right. Now, we will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and indicate your approval of aye. Any opposed? Seeing none? Thank you all very much, and Gladwin has on its way slowly but surely the new ladder truck. Chief Police, thank you for showing up this evening. I know you have other events that you need to attend. That concludes the business of the Fire Committee for tonight. President Simon.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bernheim. Our next committee is the Police Committee. I recognize Commissioner McKinn.
Thank you, President Sinai. Commissioner McComb, our chair, is not here, so I will be chairing the meeting tonight. We have two items actually on the agenda. The first is an authorization of disciplinary action for police officer, and the second item will be an update on a couple crime issues from our superintendent. So to get things moving on our first issue, I will move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of a disciplinary action for a police officer as recommended by the Superintendent of Police. Is there a second? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Whalen. With that, I'll ask if our superintendent can give a brief description of this item.
Yes, as this is a personnel matter, debriefing was held with the Board of Commissioners and pre-board, where we discussed a violation of department policies and the unanimous recommendation of the reviewers, the police command staff, is request for you to approve this one-day suspension.
Thank you. And I'll just note that this, under the first class Township Code of Lower Merion, I believe if there's issues of suspension, demotion, or termination, they need Board of Commissioners approval. I think it's section 16445 of our code. So some people ask us why are the Board of Commissioners involved in a personnel issue, and that's the case here. And we met in pre-board today to discuss it with council and with Superintendent McGrath, discussed his recommendation again on this this personnel issue. Are there any commissioners with questions or comments? Okay, is there any public comment in the room? And Jody, any public comment on Zoom? Yep. Okay, thank you. I will note that we did get public comment from Michael Pollack. I think he expressed some concerns about the Board of Commissioners' the disciplinary process, so I tried to explain that out front, to just say this is under our township code, and that's why we have this before us tonight. With that, I'll call it to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. And any opposed? Okay, Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously, I think 12-0. That's the number here? Okay, great. And with that, we'll go on to our second agenda item. This would be an update from Superintendent McGrath.
Thank you. Just want to update the community on a couple of items. First, just yesterday, November 14th, about 5:30 in the a.m., we responded to a report from a passing jogger of a homeless person being seen laying on the Kentwood Heritage Trail near the Manioc Trail Bridge. Our officers located a 42-year-old woman from Manioc who was suffering from injuries about her whole body. Also exposure to the cold air that morning. She was taken to Lankenau Hospital for further treatment. Currently, our investigators are investigating the circumstances that resulted in her being found there. There's no additional details at this point to provide until the investigation continues further.
Thank you. The burglaries, I guess, would be the second item.
Yes, there's been certainly notifications made on the township's website, through social media, and a recent community Zoom meeting about a string of burglaries that have been occurring across the township, and I just want to update the community on what's going on. If you haven't heard about it, it's certainly been released to the media. There's been a number of stories, not only in Lower Merion, but surrounding communities about this situation. So since September 1st, there's been 10 residential burglaries and 1 attempted burglary in the township. These have targeted larger homes, primarily in the western end of the township. Some of the burglaries have occurred in towns and townships throughout southeastern Pennsylvania. Victims from all of these have reported loss of jewelry, electronics, and other easily carried valuables. Investigation has determined that there are similar burglary trends along the east coast of the U.S. involving transient groups from Central and South America. Identifying and stopping these groups is a priority of numerous police agencies. These groups specifically target zip codes with higher than average medium incomes and larger homes. The general time frame of the burglaries is between 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. Locally, we have increased marked and unmarked patrol patterns to identify suspects and their vehicles while serving as a deterrent. We are evaluating all burglary cases and reports of suspicious activity for patterns, common schemes, and potentially linked suspects. We're inputting and searching for stolen property throughout law enforcement databases, public and private secondary retail sites, and monitoring known channels of sales of illicit goods. Working with law enforcement partners in the local, state, and federal level, we have developed and we're sharing criminal intelligence on these groups. So we are asking the public for help as well. First, if you see something, say something. Dial 911 if you see something unusual in your neighborhood. You know your neighborhood better than anyone. If you have an alarm system, please use it. Make sure that the exterior of your home is well lit. Landscape lighting, motion lights, and fixtures near points of entry are good deterrents. Also, you can trim back landscaping that obscures windows and doors and other points of entry to your home. Exterior security cameras should be checked and make sure they're working. Lock your windows and doors when you are away from home. And if you're traveling, you can utilize the department's vacant house program by calling the Lower Merion Police Department 24/7. The number to call is 610-649-1000. And we also have the Crime Prevention Unit can provide home security surveys. We can provide suggestions on how to improve the security of your family and home. And the number for that is 610-645-6240. And of course, that information and all of our services are also on our website.
Thank you.
That concludes comments.
With any commissioner questions or comments? Good. Seeing none, any public comment in the room? And is there any public comment online? Okay. With that, that'll conclude the business of the Police Committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner McKeon. So will the November 15th, 2023 meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Lower Merion please come to order? And all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I ask you to remain standing afterwards. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as we remain standing, I am sad to report that Frank Lutz passed away on October 20th. Frank was the Lower Merion Township Commissioner for Ward 3 for 20 years, from 1977 to 1997. He served as both Vice President and President on the board. He was also a treasured member of the Lower Merion community. So please join me in a moment of silence for Frank Lutz. Thank you. Please be seated. A couple of commissioners are going to say a few words about former Commissioner Lutz. I'm going to start with Commissioner McKeon.
Thank you, President Sinai. For those who were fortunate enough to have been residents while in Lower Merion while Frank Lutz was the commissioner from Ward 3 from 1976 to 1996, I've spoken to some, and generally the term that a lot use to describe him is larger than life. To vote. So, this was somebody who was really just a force in the community. I was fortunate to get to know Frank in my capacity as a commissioner. I got on the board in 2018 and met Frank. I would see him now and then at different events. What struck me most about Frank, the word I'd use, larger than life was maybe the phrase when he was on the board, independent. This was a guy who was pretty much always still in a hurry when he was in his 80s. Maybe he'd have time to talk to you, but he had a lot of other stuff to do, so it was kind of a quick exchange because he was off doing something else as if he was like in his 20s or 30s. He headed up to the mountains pretty frequently. He had places to go and things to do, and I'd love to be that active if I make it to his age. And headed up to the mountains constantly, and I think that's why his death, I mean, he was 87 years old, but it struck a lot of people as very sudden because this was a guy who was just so active until the end. And the other word I'd leave everyone with is legacy, because Frank, through his children, and his grandchildren and friends and relatives, they have been key contributors to the township, and they have really shaped Lower Merion, and I think they will continue to shape Lower Merion for decades. So Frank left a tremendous legacy behind him.
Thank you, Commissioner McKeon. Commissioner Zeller.
Thank you, President Sinai. I spoke with some commissioners, some former commissioners, and one of Frank Lutz's daughters, who was our dedicated township secretary, about Frank. Some of their memories included that it was clear that whatever advanced education Frank may have lacked, unlike the other know-it-alls on the board at the time, he was the real deal. He had street smarts. He had a way of cutting through government jargon to get right to the heart of a matter. He had a sixth sense about what made sense and what didn't, and he never hesitated to let you know. Frank always read every word in his packet, and he did so with a dictionary at his side, just in case. When he retired from the board, all he wanted was one of the souvenir clocks that then Secretary Eileen Traynor had in her closet. Frank is remembered by his board colleagues as a good and likable guy who made significant contributions during his service as commissioner. But a few more points about Frank. Even though he had a Bala-Cynwyd post office, he was from Belmont Hills, or the Italian Alps, as he called it. He joined his beloved Belmont Hills Fire Company at age 18, serving for almost 70 years. I understand he was still driving a fire truck up until about 10 years ago. He loved his annual winemaking, foraging for mushrooms for Sunday tomato sauce, which he called gravy, and the time he spent turkey and deer hunting at his cabin in upstate Pennsylvania. He was stubborn to the end. He hated hospitals and doctors, but he lived to age 87. He married Mary at age 19, and they met when they were just 12, and they were together until her passing just a few years ago. I knew Frank. I had a few brief chats with Frank from time to time, and with a twinkle in his eye, he'd always ask me how things were going on the board. When we last saw each other at his home, away from home, was at the Belmont Hills Fire Company. Frank Lutz was a man of his generation. He was dedicated, he was beloved, and he was well-respected, and a well-respected member of this community and township. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeller. That was great. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Courtney and Mr. McComb have asked to be excused. Mr. Bernheim.
Present.
Mr. Churchill.
Present.
Mr. Gavin.
Present.
Mr. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Here.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. McKeon.
Present.
Ms. O'Neill.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Present.
Mr. Whalen.
Here.
Mr. Zillow.
Here.
Mr. Sinai.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'm going to make a motion that we approve the minutes of a stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held on October 18th, 2023, as distributed. Thank you, Vice President Gavin, for that second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Madam Secretary, that passes. A few announcements. The board met in executive session earlier this evening regarding the following matters: police arbitration, police disciplinary action, the recruitment of a new superintendent of police, billboard litigation, the ARP nonprofit vitality grant program, an Ardmore House real estate matter, and a Lower Merion School District update. This will not come as a surprise, but Thursday, November 23rd, 2023, Thanksgiving Day, is a legal holiday. The Township Administration Building and libraries will be closed for business, and there will be no refuse or recycling collection. The second public hearing on the proposed 2023 budget and proposed 2023-2028 capital improvement plan will be held on Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, at approximately 6 p.m. Tonight is the first public hearing. The second one is 2 weeks from tonight. With that, we turn to public privilege of the floor. This is a section of our meeting where any member of the public may address the board on any non-agenda items or any other public matters in which the township has jurisdiction or authority. Comments regarding the ordinance to amend the fees for bags related to this prohibition on single-use plastic carryout bags, make those later. We will have a separate section of the meeting about that, and there'll be public comment. And then comments about the budget and capital improvement plan should be held for that section of the meeting. But if you wish to address the board on something else that's not on the agenda tonight, this is the time, and if you're in the room and wish to take advantage of public privilege, we ask that you come to this podium up here. Thanks. I'm going to just ask that you state your name and where you live before addressing the board. And it's a policy we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
You got it.
Okay.
My name is Enrique Hervada, and I live in Radnor Township on 819 Colony Road. I know a couple of you. I know Mr. Zeloff and I know Mr. Stevenson. And my first thing I'm going to say is I appreciate everything you guys do, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know how much work goes into this. I work in Lower Merion Township, and I drive down Spring Mill Road every day, and then I drive back down Spring Mill Road every day. And for 8 months, it's been like driving through Beirut. It's really in bad shape. And I also know that it's a state road, and I know you guys don't have authority over it. And I had a meeting that timed it, that I was literally driving by at 7:30. So I wanted to come in, and it's really more a question for staff. Do you have any idea when they're going to be done? Because this project has been going on for like 8 months. Sometimes they're done at 4, sometimes they're done at 6. Sometimes there's one truck out there stopping traffic and sweeping a little stuff. Sometimes there's 10 trucks out there and they're doing a lot. I feel like they're taking advantage of the situation and not really trying to move this project along in a quick manner. And I think it's impacting the residents that live there as well. So that's all I really have to say. And if you could give me any idea and if maybe encourage them to move this project along, I would appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir. So we take all the comments and then we respond at the end?
Okay,
So
great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room wish to take advantage of public privilege? Okay, seeing none. Joe, you have anyone online?
No.
Okay, we had some comments submitted in advance. Daniel Botti from Haverford wrote about traffic at various locations on Lancaster Avenue. Ethan Frank from Marion wrote about traffic along Montgomery Avenue and also parking and parking requirements for new construction. Alicia Ingiosi from Bala Kinwood wrote about the property owned by Cross Properties on Bala Avenue, pedestrian improvements at various intersections at Bala Kinwood, and the condition of the sidewalk connecting Kinwood Station to the public parking garage. And Michael Pollack from Ardmore wrote about various matters of concern. Okay. The board has received comments of all of these, copies of all of these. They are available if you wish to see them from the township secretary. You can request them. So with that, does any of my colleagues wish to respond to any of these? I will if no one else wants to go. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With respect to the Spring Mill Road project, this is indeed this is a long one. We were set back this week, I know, because there was a gas emergency leak, and that slowed down at least by a day. The widening project at Montgomery Avenue hasn't helped matters. The fact that it's in 2 different stages hasn't helped, including detour routes. I'm not making excuses. I agree. It's been a long time. A number 1 complaint. The borders an area of the ward that I represent. So I hear you. And if if it would be appropriate, I can email you as soon as I get a staff update, unless we have one this evening from a member of, I don't think we have a staff update this evening, but I'd be pleased to follow up with you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. Anyone else? Commissioner Kramer.
Yes, it's my understanding that the sidewalk between the station and the parking lot for the Kinwood Trail and the Kinwood Station is the responsibility of the BMW dealership. And I have raised this issue with the township in the past as I've received complaints about it. And perhaps the township should follow up with the BMW dealership to have this redone or repaired. In terms of the Montgomery and Conshohocken intersection, that is scheduled to be reconfigured in the near future. And I believe that the changes that are scheduled to be made will take care of the residents' concerns.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer, and thank you for raising that section of the trail behind the BMW dealership. That's what I was going to comment on, and I share your view. Something needs to be done about that before someone falls into a pothole back there. Anyone else? Okay. Okay, seeing none. Thank you for those who commented. This is now public comment, the section of our meeting where members of the public may address the board on any agenda items. Same sort of rules of engagement. Please come up to this podium and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Good evening, my colleagues in Wood. I read the agreement with Haverford Township on the polo fields, and I have to tell you, I'm really impressed. It's a very fine piece of work. It's thorough, it's fair, it addresses all the concerns, and I like that it takes care of the needs of our township, but just as importantly, I think it shows a lot of respect to our neighborhood, or neighboring Haverford Township. So I just want to thank you for a really fine piece of work.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to take advantage of public comment?
Isabel Melvin.
Ms. Melvin, you can take the microphone out of the stand.
Okay.
That helps sometimes.
That's okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay? Great. Yes, I'd like to also comment on the proposal for the polo fields. I'd like to thank Commissioner Zeloff and Commissioner Gavrin. Thank you for all your hard work, and hopefully we'll be able to preserve Oakwell. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to take advantage of public comment? Jody, anyone online?
No.
Okay. We had one public comment submitted in advance of the meeting from Michael Pollock of Ardmore, who wrote in support of numerous items and also about the practice of holding committee meetings prior to board meetings. And once again, it's a practice of this board to summarize these comments. If you wish to see the full text, as all of us already have, you can contact the township secretary for copies of those. Does any board member wish to respond to any of the comments? Yeah, Vice President Gavrin.
Just very quickly, Ms. Capone and Ms. Melvin, thank you very much for your comments. I think it's also important to thank, and I think you brought up a really good point on the respect for our neighboring townships. This was an agreement that was a lot of work between Lower Merion Township, Lower Merion School District, and Haverford Township. Traditionally, there have been a lot of difficulties in working, between government agencies. And I think, hopefully, not only is this a great example of how we can work together, but the start of a very different paradigm for how we work together. And I think, hopefully, that goes a long way, and it can show that we can do this for the future. And there are a lot of regional issues, and I hope they all kind of, as difficult as this was, I hope they all show the respect that we all showed for each other, and we're able to solve problems together that way. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Vice President Gavrin. So most of us spoke to this already when this was on the committee last week. So I won't repeat it too much here, other than to say thank you for coming and saying nice things to this board. And I think everyone here has shared your view, which is, I think we're deeply grateful for Commissioner Zeloff in Gavin, and Manager McNeely, and the others on staff, and as Vice President Gavin said, of Lower Merion School District, and certainly the folks in Haverford, all of who worked extremely hard to make this happen. Thank you. With that, we go to the consent calendar. That's on page 5 of your packet. Would anyone like to remove any item from consent? Okay. I'd like to move that we approve the consent calendar as presented, and including the items from the meetings of the Fire Committee and Police Committee held earlier this evening. Thank you, Vice President Gavin, for that second. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
For the adoption of the consent calendar, Mr. Burnham.
Aye.
Mr. Churchill.
Yes.
Mr. Gavin.
Aye.
Mr. Grimes.
Aye.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Yes.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Yes.
Mr. McKeon.
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Whalen.
Yes.
Mr. Zillow.
Aye.
Mr. Sinai.
Yes.
The consent calendar is duly adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So with that, we turn to our first public hearing on the proposed 2024 budget, proposed 2024-2029 capital improvement program. So I'm going to open that hearing. So this public hearing was authorized for advertisement at a stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held October 18th, 2023, and duly advertised in the November 5th, 2023 edition of the Mainline Times and Suburban. There will be a second public hearing that will be held on Wednesday, November 29th at approximately 6 p.m. So with that, I'm going to turn to our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Eric Trupp.
I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen and such here. Okay, so unlike last week, I'm going to go very rapidly through a much smaller selection of slides summarizing the township's proposed 2024 budget and 2024-2029 capital improvement program. We discussed this at length, and basically the point of me just kind of reiterating things is just kind of to reorient the board to what we're talking about for anyone who's in the room or any public who wants to comment who might not have been at the previous presentation. So really quickly here, the proposed 2024 budget is for general fund 77 million, budget gap of 4.5 million that can be covered by the township's general fund balance. When you look at general fund revenues for 2024, about half of that comes from real estate taxes, about another quarter comes from business taxes, and then a final quarter just from everything else. When you look at the revenue changes between 2023 and 2024 budget, it's about a 3% increase. We talked about the reasons for a lot of these changes at the last meeting. If anyone wants any recap of those things, just feel free to ask me a question. On the expenditure side of the ledger, you kind of see the breakdown here. Obviously, police operating 24/7 takes the largest chunk of the pie, and you can see the allocations throughout the other areas. Of note is debt service is a smaller percentage than last year, and then certainly 5 or 6 years ago. In terms of how those expenditures, instead of from departmental, but more of a functional level, we really, the vast majority of the general fund budget funds people, their benefits, and the township's debt. That's about 80%. 20% is absolutely everything else. In terms of when you compare the expenditures between 23 budget and 24 budget, we're looking at approximately a 1.8% increase. You can see the major reasons for the changes. And again, went through this in detailed fashion last week. If anyone wants more details, just ask. From a staffing perspective, we're looking at 3 additional full-time positions, which were discussed going back to the budget workshop. We have a vacancy turnover savings estimate about 2.6 million, and we have wage increases per the agreed upon labor agreements. And other things on expenditures, we've done really well in terms of managing employee benefits, largely because of our success in restraining the growth in healthcare costs. We are seeing some premium increases, but they're all relatively manageable. Our pension contribution is very manageable for next year, and in line with the recent increases we had in Pennsylvania state aid for pensions. In terms of debt, the debt has been coming down. We're at the lowest level we've been at decades. We're at the lowest percentage of the general fund expenditures in decades. Largely, one of the things that's really helping us at is all those ARP dollars that the board has decided to allocate to capital projects, because if we use those dollars, we don't have to use township dollars that we issued debt for. When talking about the CIP, it's very large, over 50 million. I haven't had that in my tenure here. We've barely been maybe once or twice over 40. So it is going to take a lot to get through. Again, typically funded by 20-year GO bonds, but we have a lot of these ARP funds and recreation development fees and liquid fuels funds as well. So we try to make as good a use as we can of federal, state, and any local dollars we can bring into the CIP. This chart you've seen before, it just shows you on an all funds basis, top projects that are in the CIP. And then, we always try to give you not only a look at the current year budget, but where we're going. We do still see a structural deficit moving forward. Now, fortunately, we've generally been able to outperform these forecasts over time. When you look at these forecasts, they are not as dire as they've been in the past, which I think reflects the revenue growth that we've seen in recent years. But still is at least a cause for caution. This is the forecast. If you look at the black line is the revenues, the red line is the expenditures, the blue bars are the township's fund balance, and then the colors are the township's fund balance policy. So it helps you kind of see where we've been and where at least we think we're going and what that impact would be in terms of the township's fund balance level over the next few years. So again, overall, really solid financial outlook. Obviously, we remain optimistic, but there's always can be some things that come up in the future, whether that's continued inflation or escalating inflation, whether that be an economic slowdown, changes, anything that could happen in the economy could impact the township's local economy. So this is our first public hearing tonight. We'll do the same thing in 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks from then, hopefully have an adopted budget with any of the amendments offered by the board throughout that process. And with that, I'll close my comments and let you all get to it.
Okay, thank you, Eric. With that, we turn to public comment. Does anyone in the room wish to comment on the proposed budget and CIP? Seeing no rush to the podium, Jody, do we have anyone online? Okay. So, I guess I will close the public hearing, and that's the point where it's open for our colleagues. If you have any questions for staff or any comments. Mr. Bernheim.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment, if I may, Eric, and it is really to thank you for responding to the list of questions that I gave you so fast. And, part of those was just to, reconfirm for you, yes, I am a nerd and I do look at some, odd statistics from time to time. But one of the things I did just make note for everybody to ask Eric is that if he was aware of or knew where we could find out if there was any other municipality within the country that could state that for 12 years or 13 years it has had no tax increase and maintains a AAA bond rating. Eric was unaware of where it was and that you could go and check maybe with some of the rating agencies, and without going into the details, that's what I did with somebody who knows something about it. And the answer was no. They could not name one other municipality that could boast of what we do throughout the entire nation. Now, their research may be off, but it is quite unique as to who and what we are, and it speaks volumes as to members of this board and our staff and all the people that mine our budget so carefully. So with that, just that comment, and again, Eric, I'm sure between now and before we vote on this, I'll have more questions for you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Anyone else? So there will be, potentially amendments to the budget. Those we kind of collect in advance, and then they'll be dealt with 2 weeks from now. That way they can be posted on the agenda so the public can see them before them. One of the reasons it's probably so quiet tonight. And then the other is I appreciate Commissioner Bernheim's comments. I don't want to rain on the parade too much, but I'll just, because I'm nerdier than him, I'm going to note that we have not had a tax rate increase, but we have had tax increases because our revenues have been going up. And what's been happening is that the tax base has been going up, especially among the commercial districts. And so we've been fortunate not to have to raise the millage rate, but that's because things like solid waste fees have been going up, is because the revenue from the commercial establishments in the township, which is a portion of the tax base that we have that the school district does not, is accounting for an ever-increasing portion of our budget. Okay, so I guess that's the end of the first public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Traub. And with that, Jody, it's the compensation and classification study on page 35 is next?
Correct.
Okay. I need to catch up then. So we're on page 35 of our packet. And I will move that we approve the execution of an agreement with HR Compensation Consultants, LLC, to conduct a township-wide non-uniform compensation classification study at a base cost of $64,490, with the inclusion of optional fees of $3,465, to include 7 part-time positions in the analysis and $9,000 to analyze employee benefits, for a total cost of up to $76,955. Do I have a second? Thank you, Vice President Gavin. I see our Assistant Township Manager, Brandon Ford here. Brandon, are you there just in case people have questions, or do you want to say something?
No, I'm here just in case anyone has any other questions.
Okay. So, any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Bernheim.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was unable to attend the meeting, but I did listen to it from last week, and Brandon was kind enough prior to that meeting to respond to some of the inquiry I had, and I just want to share it. I know what the vote was. I know that it's highly unlikely anything I may say may change that vote, but there were a couple concerns that I had raised as to what we were doing and why we were doing it in the scope that we were doing. Studies for Workers Association or FOP, we get that every time we do contracts. So we really should be, in my humble opinion, talking about a smaller group. And one of the questions that in the communications back and forth with Brandon was that, are we finding ourselves that we're so out of kilter that people are leaving, or we're so out of kilter when we make offers, they say no, the grass is greener elsewhere? Is there something that is indicating that we really don't know what we're doing, so to speak, with some of these job compensations? And that doesn't seem to be evident or happening at all, or something that is standing out. So again, the question was, when we go ahead and do this, if you go and look elsewhere in other municipalities as to what they are paying, that is only a piece of the entire puzzle. And the fact that when somebody comes to work for Lower Merion, so I noted unique financially before, is unique in a lot of other aspects. And that part of the equation is not a metric, and becomes very hard then to go ahead, if we're doing this for comparison purposes, to mix into the fold. So I wonder if here now the expense of just about $77,000, if this is what we really need in order to accomplish what we want. I would bet Beth would be very happy if we said, I'll tell you what, we'll go hire somebody for that amount to work, part-time for you, and fill in the position and some of the work you have and get some of this data. So I bring this forward, and as I say, unfortunately, I was unable to attend last week, in that I question, what are we really going to accomplish by spending this amount of money? What juice are we getting for this squeeze?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dan, and, I appreciated having your questions that you sent earlier, and unfortunately you weren't able to attend last week. But when we're talking about deliverables, right, we're going to be talking about two basically pools, or two categories of deliverables. One being the market analysis, right, comparing what we are offering our employees across 144 different positions, plus 7 part-time positions if that option is executed, as well as the benefits that we are offering to not only new hires, but also if there's promotions within the organization. So the market analysis is one part of it. So by looking outside of our region, and we did talk about this a little bit last week, when we fully acknowledge that we participate in a regional salary survey with the Montgomery County Consortium of Communities. And as I referenced last week, while that is beneficial, it really doesn't apply to Lower Merion because we are a first-class township not only in code but also in distinction. There's not many municipalities that do what we do to the scale and to the scope that we do. And to rely on a solely regional comparison with other nearby municipalities, while it satisfies other municipalities, really can't hold the same weight in use here in Lower Merion. So when we would, engaging with this consultant, we would basically look outside the box. We would look beyond our region to find our more adequate peers and our more adequate comparisons. So we can make more apples to apples comparisons in likewise similar size, scope, and scale municipalities. So that's one benefit, right? Kind of now looking at what we're offering our new hires and when we offer promotions. The other part of it, the other pool of benefits that we would derive from such a study is the classification portion of it, right? It would be looking at all those different positions, both full-time and part-time if that option is executed, and reassessing their job functions. I wrote in the issue briefing and mentioned last week, our last compensation and classification study was conducted in 1991, right? We are now in 2023. Things are different, right? Technology that we use in our day-to-day lives to fulfill our functions is different. Our responsibilities are different. The way we go about doing our jobs is different. And in some roles, positions have expanded. In others, they have contracted to right-size the scope of services that individuals are performing for the township. So by looking at and interviewing with different employees, the department directors, finding exactly what a person, employee does so that the job descriptions can accurately capture what they're doing. We can update the 144 full-time job descriptions so that they are accurate and truly reflective of the today modern responsibilities, and that we identify the skills and capabilities that we need for employees when we go look for new hires. So not only would we upgrade all those different job descriptions, 144 with the full-time, 7 if we do the part-time, but also we look at updating our pay structure, how we go about conducting our wage calculations, right? The 1991 study, and I brought an exhibit last week, which is back in the safe because it's the only copy that exists. It's all paper-based. It is not electronic. So whenever, in staff, HR, does wage calculations, when we go to offer a position to a new hire, or we do see a promotion within a department, all those calculations are done by hand using criteria that were developed in 1991, right? And again, one of the criteria, and I can't go into all the different details and tell you the secret recipe as to how we do it, but one is skill set, and that is, outdated. It's obsolete because we're we're operating on a 1991 system. So one of the other deliverables, in that pool of benefits that we would derive from this study is an electronic system that we would be able to not only do such calculations in a modern fashion, but also electronically, so it would also increase the efficiency of how we do that. And I do want to recognize we do have our Human Resources Director, Beth Lillick, online. If she wants to add anything else, she's also available for the board if they have any questions.
Yeah, Beth got on when she heard me say hire somebody for her. But Brandy, thank you for that explanation. It really, we've had this discussion, and I truly, appreciate it. But correct me if I'm wrong. If we go forward and do this, and I assume, as I said at the start, the board will have the same outcome of vote, that the updating will allow us hopefully to update on our own, because this, whatever we get, would certainly be more relevant than 1991, but it too will have a shelf life, and its shelf life will be even shorter than the others. So hopefully this is a system so that we can internally do whatever is necessary to keep it up to date as time goes forward, and we're not in a couple of years saying, all right, we need to do this again, and the price tag will be $177,000.
And if I may, that's an important distinction. Once we have an electronic platform, something that is digital, will be far easier for us to update, 10 years from now and keep updated on a regular basis, right? So that's another benefit. Because right now, as I said, it's purely paper-based, and should we lose one of the papers inside, we have to make sure we make copies and replace the paper that we fill in with calculations, should we get to that last copy.
All right, thank you very much.
And thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Anyone else wish to have comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay. The ayes have it, and that motion passes.
What was the vote?
Vote was 8 in favor and 2 opposed.
So we now turn to page 38 of the packet, which is the adoption of an ordinance for a single-use plastic carryout bag fee, Chapter 90, Health and Sanitation. So I'm going to make this as a motion. I'm going to move that we amend the code of the Township of Lower Merion, or adopt an ordinance to amend the code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 90, Health and Sanitation, Article 9, single-use plastic carryout bag regulations by providing that retail establishments shall charge a fee for compliant bags of not less than 10 cents. And just to be clear, the existing code says you have to charge exactly 10 cents, and this allows people to charge more if they wish. This ordinance was authorized for advertisement at a stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held October 18th, 2023, and duly advertised in the October 29th, 2023 edition of the Mainline Times in Suburban. And so I've made the motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. It's ordinance number 4282. Anyone have questions for the staff or any comments on this?
Very quick comment, if I
yes,
may. I've noted before, and I'll be quick about it, I'm not in favor of this charge, period, and hopefully at some point we will have a motion that removes this in total. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Madam Secretary, I believe you have a roll call vote.
For the adoption of ordinance 4282, Mr. Bernheim.
Reluctantly, aye.
Mr. Churchill.
Yes.
Mr. Gavin.
Yes.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Yes.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Zelloff.
Aye.
Mr. Sinai.
Yes.
The ordinance is duly adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So it's a speedy evening. Is there any unfinished business to come before the board? Any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, the Board of Commissioners meeting for this evening is hereby adjourned.